In the continuation of violence in the community, how has the persona of guns changed from when you were a child to now, especially with the numerous mass shootings that have occurred in the U.S.?
That's a great question. So when I went to school, the most you had to worry about was, were you going to get into a fight? Were you going to get a black eye? And were you going to get into trouble when you got home? I never worried about dying by a gun. That was just unfathomable to me, that someone would actually end up dead due to gun violence. We didn't even have a security guard, or if you want to call it, we have some sort of security, but not much. And you could enter school whenever you wanted. You could go out for lunch, come back. There was a lot of freedom. And so you didn't worry about guns. If you heard about some sort of gun violence, it didn't happen in school. It was somewhere else. It was due to some sort of violent crime, whether it was a drug deal that went down, or carjacking. Carjacking was actually big at the time that I was growing up, so you weren't worried about that. But going to school and worrying about somebody bringing a gun to school didn't happen. The access to guns just wasn't there, or at least not that I was aware of. I didn't know anybody who saw a gun, handled a gun, touched a gun, or even thought about bringing a gun to school. And to see that kids now are afraid of going to school, or that we're trying to implement policies to protect kids from gun violence, has really changed the way that we treat and think about guns. We think about it as protecting our Second Amendment rights, which we do have the right to have, the right to bear arms. But at what point do someone's life supersede that? You know, when is it the right to bring a gun to school and children lose their lives just by attending school? And so it really has come 180 degrees, in my opinion, that you could walk to school and be with your friends and be at school and feel safe, to now where you have kids that want to be homeschooled, that don't want to go to particular schools because they're afraid of gun violence. That wasn't even a thought when I was going to school.
Do you think that the government is trying to help with stricter gun laws to ensure safety, especially for students who are, like you said, are scared to go to school? Or are they just trying to slack off and wait those, such as like the MSD students, the Santa Fe students, just wait them out to see if they are going to disappear with the news? Because after a while, the news might not cover these shootings and, you know, students trying to protest against it. So do you think the government is just trying to wait them out, or do you think they're going to try to implement stricter legislation?
I think they're going to try to wait them out. I think that the NRA has such a strong hold as a lobbying group on our government. We had Columbine, we had Sandy Hook, we had the Las Vegas shooting, we had Marjorie Stoneman, we had the shooting in Santa Fe, and then countless other schools. And we have the outrage, we have the outcries, we have the people protesting. And yet still, what has changed in 20, 30, 40 years? Nothing. Except that there was a time when you could go to school and feel safe, and now we're at a time when children don't feel safe going to school. And why is that? It's because we've allowed an organization to set forth policies, because that's what I believe they've really done. They have they've gone into our government and said, you need to protect the Second Amendment right. Okay, I agree with that. But what about the right of people to have their own lives? What about the right to go to school, the right to an education? At which point does that become a priority like guns do to the NRA?
Do you believe that these new students have found their identity or their path to their identity with these shootings, seeing how they want to take a new approach and step forth to fight for what they want, to fight for stricter gun laws, and hopefully to ban the AR-15?
Well, I think with Columbine, that was probably, that was one of the largest school shootings, and people were outraged. But there was no movement at the time. People were angry, but no movement, because it was, well, what can we do? And people protested, but then it somewhat faded. But I think technology has also made the difference. I think now with kids on their social media protest, they have another way to speak. At that point in time, there was no platform to speak out and spread the word and keep the movement going. Because back then you had to protest and you couldn't get to destinations. Now kids can protest just by their phones, spreading the word and creating a movement across the country like we've never seen. Plus, I believe that children today have more access to information than we had before, to be able to learn and see and read things for themselves that we didn't have when I was growing up. So I think they're able to make a change and push this government actually in a direction that it may not want to go.
Many of those in government and many officials see the Stoneman Douglas as an economic boost because many are, donating to GoFundMe's and T-shirts are selling and bumper stickers are selling. Do you believe that it's an economic gain, or that it's just another way, especially with like the T-shirts and the clothing, because that's what most kids and students are wearing to show their effort towards the cause? Do you think that's going towards the movement, or is it just another way to make funds?
I think it can be exploited by those who want to exploit it. But I think the children that are behind it, it's not about the money. They don't care about the money. A lot of these kids already have money. So they're not trying to do it to exploit the economic boom from it. They're doing it so that they can get the word out, so that they can keep that memory alive and not let it fade as it had with so many others. So to say that it's there for exploitation, sure, but anything and anyone and any position can be exploited. But it doesn't mean that that's the particular case here. I think it's a way to be able to raise funds, to raise awareness, and be able to get a change going. And this upcoming election is going to make a world of difference.
Could you have pictured this kind of movement when you were a teenager in high school? Could you have seen this whole community of not only students but parents, teachers, this whole group of people fighting for a cause? Can you have seen this or pictured this when you were a teenager and something like this happened?
No, and the reason for that is because a lot of times then it was, well, that wouldn't happen in my neighborhood, or that only happens in certain areas. That wouldn't happen where I live, or it must be a reason why that happens in that particular area. But I think we're now starting to see that this type of gun violence is not restricted to any economic, social, or political class. It can happen anywhere, at any time, to anyone. And the difference between then and now is that, again, with social media, with technology, to be able, the March for Our Lives that we did was empowering, because they were able to pull together a movement, a march, in such short time. But you couldn't do that when I was a kid. Not because, one, my parents would have said, well, that's not our issue. That happened in that area. And that's, you have to go to school. Now I think my generation is a little bit more wiser, a little bit more attuned, and a little bit more apathetic to what's going on with your generation, and not wanting to see that your generation can make it through. But if we continue with all of this gun violence, who do we have left to raise?